Hey everybody, Chad Riedlinger back again with another episode of the Mortgage Lab. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Josh Pitts. How you doing, Josh?
What's up, Chad? Thanks so much for letting me come join you on the lab. I like this, man. I'm excited for it.
Me too. So when I started, putting this show together, Josh is one of the first guys I wanted to bring on the show because first and foremost, the guy is everywhere. So if you're in the mortgage industry, I'm sure you've seen Josh around. You either see him on LinkedIn, you see him on Instagram. The guy literally is everywhere. You can't go through your feed without seeing Josh, either being interviewed by somebody or interviewing somebody. So first and foremost, Josh, for the 2% of people who don't know who you are, can you just give us a little bit of background on yourself, kind of where you started in the industry and what you're doing lately?
Yeah, dude, 100%. And I'm grateful for the kind words. And again, grateful to be on here. So anybody who hasn't heard my story, my background is mortgage. I was a mortgage advisor. I like to say that. We all call ourselves loan officers. That term, it's been commoditized. So you really got to find ways to separate yourself. So I had the opportunity to help people finance their dreams. And I did that for years and years. I had my own mortgage brokerage here in the state of Utah. A partner of mine, we had, a lot of LOs. We were cranking out, doing a ton of deals, having a ton of fun with that. And a couple of years ago, really got into the social media, building a brand, and still to this day, still originate. I don't do a lot of loans. I'm not the 20+ producer I used to be back in the day, but I still keep my license to stay fresh, to make sure I know what's going on, just because I get to talk to everybody from the industry. So it's cool making sure that I'm up to date on everything. If we're going to be experts in our field, we got to make sure we're experts and we're knowledgeable about it. So, absolutely. That's the 20-second background of me. Is mortgage industry's in my blood. Real estate's in my blood, and I love now I had the opportunity to use my brand, to use a platform to help others really get themselves out there, which we're going to be talking about. So
tell us a little bit about Shred Media and kind of like what how'd you gravitate to there, and also what you've been doing with that platform to help other people in our industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shred came, what's funny is people think Shred has been around for a long time. And Shred Media actually started in the beginning of 2019. We're actually a year old this month. And I started it because, again, I started getting into social media a lot a couple of years ago, started getting into building a brand, a personal brand, which I'm sure we'll get into here. But I started Shred because here I'm in Utah. Actually, if I turn the camera around right now, I'm looking out my office window and it's like snowing here in Utah. And Shred came from that. Shred, I've had the URL, and Shred came from actually snowboarding. I've been here in Utah. I love shredding it up. And one day I was sitting around and I'm like, Shred, show up, hustle, repeat every day. I'm like, holy crap, that's a great acronym for my head. Like, never expected that. So started Shred and really started focusing on, we had companies reaching out to us saying, hey, Josh, you're so great at, building your own brand. Can you help us build our brand? So if you've ever read the book, Play Bigger, I love the book, Play Bigger. So I started looking in the industry and seeing what was out there. And there was consultants and there was different agencies, but I'm like, you know what? We're not a consulting. We're not a PR firm. Really what we are is we're an attention impact agency. We help companies get impact or get attention and make sure that attention is creating impact with their audience. So we quickly became that attention impact agency in the industry. And now we get to work with some of the top, some of the biggest lending companies, from United Wholesale to Caliber to some of the biggest and the best in the entire industry. And it's been a ton of fun being able to help these companies. And now Shred, our latest project, a lot of people have been asking, you guys have been all, like you mentioned, we're kind of all over the place. What are you working on now? We're actually working on a community specifically designed for originators and industry professionals to help them grow their personal brand. So Shred's been a ton of fun. I get to do this, which I'm humble. I was on a podcast even earlier today, and she was asking me, like, did you ever expect it to be here? I'm like, no. Especially in this short amount of time, building a brand takes a lot of work. It takes some sincere focus, but it's absolutely worth it in the end. I'm sure we'll get into kind of what it takes to build a brand. But that's the background of Shred, man. It's been a ton of fun. It's been 2019 was good for everybody, but for us, it was a lot of fun. So.
Well, kudos to you for making such a big name for yourself and more importantly for your brand in one short year. And that just shows you what you can do in such a short amount of time if you commit to the process. And Josh, like I know from watching, you're all about the process. It's grinding each and every day, being consistent. I know you and I both are huge fans of Gary Vee, and kind of he talks about, be fast in the micro, but patient in the macro. And so, but it kind of shows too that even though a lot of people are using social media, when you flood it the way you've been doing it, and you're just constantly telling your story and you're putting out good content, it can happen quick for you. It doesn't have to be a super long-term process either.
No, I totally agree. And that's a lot of people are like, well, you're an overnight success. And I'm like, whoa, well, hold on here. Like,
That doesn't exist.
if you saw the work that went on behind, like on the late nights and everything that we were doing, building a brand, like you said, Chad, is absolutely that. It definitely takes time. It's a long-term play. Here in the mortgage industry in particular, sometimes we're so focused on the short term. We're focused on these loans and trying to cranking them out real quick, filling up our pipeline and doing it again and again and again. What I call the LO roller coaster. We're always going on these up and downs. You cannot try to build a brand like that. If you do, it's going to be frustrating to you. You're going to look at the short term. You're going to be like, well, what's the ROI of building a brand? How fast can I do this? You can't look at it that way. Most people, and again, I'm humbled, and I don't say this to brag, like I'm not an exception to the rule, but I put out a ton of content. You and I were talking about this. I've put out just a ton of content, and I tell people I'm a little bit different than most. My audience is you guys. It's everything we're talking to here. Most loan originators, most mortgage professionals, their audience is the consumer. It's people looking to buy a home, trying to refinance. So that's your audience. And again, when it comes to putting out content, you don't have to, you and I were talking about this too. You have people like Gary Vaynerchuk who are saying, hey, you need to put out 64 pieces of content a day. And it's like, that's not possible for most of us. Like, there's no way you're going to be able to do that. But even getting started, getting a couple pieces of content out there to your consumers where they're really able to start connecting with you on a different level, that's where you start with building a personal brand.
And so I think you and I both know how important it is for loan officers to build their personal brand, because look, the fact of the matter is the fintech companies want to put us out of business, and none of us have the type of money to spend that Quicken Loans has. Right? We're not going to spend $1 billion a year, creating brand awareness with consumers out there. But so for loan officers, the only way we're going to win, is to build your personal brand in your community. So Josh, what advice would you give loan officers that want to start out, in building their personal brand and making sure that they're the first person that a consumer or a realtor thinks of when they want to get a loan? How do they go about getting started in today's social media age?
Get started. No, well, let me expand on that. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Quicken, because Quicken's like a nasty word, and trust me, like I know where everybody's coming from, but you look at what Quicken is doing, and you look at how they're using influencer marketing. Like if you watch ESPN, if you watch sports at all, Quicken is everywhere. Like they're in everything. And you look at some of the top athletes, and they're using them. That is the power. Like they're literally using people's brands to grow what they're doing. Like they're a perfect example of what I tell people. Like if you were growing a brand, they'd be reaching out to you. They'd be paying you millions of dollars to endorse their brand. Yeah. We need to think like that in building a brand. So to get started, to answer your question, Chad, I tell people is like, hey, if you are not already using social media, and the biggest thing that people ask me all the time, well, Josh, there's already so many people doing it. The space is so noisy. Like I missed the boat. I missed the train. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you, I literally comb through content. That's part of what I do all day long is I look at content. And here's the thing is everybody thinks there's so many people doing it. The thing is we just see the same people doing it over and over and over. We like what they're doing. We follow what they're doing. And again, we won't get into algorithms, but social networks recognize that. That's why we see those people all the time, because we've engaged with them. Same things. We have to do that for our own brand. We have to put content out there so people can follow us and engage with us. But if you think you've missed the train, you're 100% wrong. Now couldn't be a better time, but you really need to start doing it now. So to get started, I tell people is you don't need fancy equipment. You can see my mic in front of you. You and I, again, we've been doing this a little bit longer. So some of our equipment is stepped up. But when I started, Chad, all I did was use this baby. I used my cell phone. That's all I used. I had no microphone. I had no camera. I was just talking into my phone, and it started. And next thing I knew, I started doing it more frequently. I started doing it more consistently. And I started to see my audience grow and grow and grow and grow. So if you're listening right now, and again, we all sound like a broken record, but even on my podcast earlier, I told people, I was like, I'm going to sound like a broken record until we have 75% of the industry who has their personal podcast. They have a show or whatever platform they decide to use. They have it. Until then, Guys, there's maybe a fractional percentage of our entire industry who is using social media to grow their brand. And then there's even a more fractional percentage of those people who are actually using it right, Chad. And
Yeah,
you know what I'm
exactly.
talking. There's a lot of people who are using social media just to throw out. If you're a mortgage professional, you're just throwing out rates and programs and this and that. People don't care.
Yeah.
People care about Chad. People care about Josh. People care about you. That's what social media is. It's building a brand that people, they know, like, and trust. And on this, Chad, I want to make sure everybody is very, very, there's a difference between branding and brand. Branding is a logo. It's a slogan. It's visual typically. A brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. It's
That's
your
awesome.
reputation. That's what a brand is. So if you're start with that in mind. Like, what are people saying about me? Am I doing a great job? It really boils down to like customer service and how you connect. We talk about this as a relationship industry. Use social media as that. How are you building that relationship via social media? So that's when you got to get started, Chad, when it comes to that, is you just have to start putting out content and decide what medium are you going to use? Is it video? Is it audio? A lot of people say this. They're like, well, I don't like the way I look on camera, Josh. Let me tell you something, kind of a secret. You look exactly the same off camera as you do on camera. So if you're a mortgage advisor, if you're a mortgage professional and you meet with people in person, guess what? You look the same way.
What do you do? Not meet with the customer and say, hey, let's just do this over the phone. But hey, I really want to meet you. And I think the other big misconception is people say, well, I don't want to annoy people. I don't want to put too much content out. Meanwhile, they're putting out like 1 or 2 pieces a week. And the fact of the matter is they're not going to see all your content anyway. So you have to put all that content out there, maybe so they see you once or twice. And I think that's a big misnomer is like, hey, I don't want to bother people. I don't want people to unfriend me or whatever. They're not going to do that. Like unless you're like literally bothering them specifically. But I think in general, you got to put out a lot of content just to be visible in the newsfeed.
Yep.
There's so much competition for that newsfeed right now. And people are scrolling so fast, they're not even going to notice half your content. So you got to put out content at scale.
That's one of the things people ask me a lot. Like, Josh, you put out so much content. Do you bug a lot of people? Like, are people like, oh my gosh, like, do they turn off your notifications? I don't know. And I don't care. Like,
Exactly.
Honestly, like I really don't. If they turned off my notifications, that means like, hey, they clearly don't like what I'm putting out. And that's totally okay. I'm trying to connect with the people that love my content. And like you said, Chad, I put out so many pieces of content that most people, it's funny because every once in a while, people will come back and be like, I didn't even see that piece of content. And like, I thought I saw everything of yours. And I'm like, guys, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, they all have their algorithms. Yeah. And again, there's so much that goes into that. The more content that you can put out, the more frequently you're going to not only have the people that you want to engage with, but you're going to expand that audience, which that's what you're trying to do anyway.
Yeah. And I think it's important for the LOs out there or branch managers to think about, okay, what is my brand going to be? Like, help craft that message. Because like you said, brand is what people think about or talk about you when you're not around. So are you going to help craft that message, right? What do you want people to say about you? What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be the specialist to help veterans? Do you want to be, I was listening to a guy the other day, he's the mortgage pug, right? So it's like, do you want to have like, what's going to be your hook? What's going to be the thing that anchors and people to remember you? Because, look, there's a ton of competition for mind share right now. So you have to pick something that's going to be your hook. Do you have the little fluffy white dog? Do you want to, do you have a really nice, do you have an old Corvette that you want to like do your videos with your Corvette in the background? Like, what's going to be the anchor that gets people to think of you and remember you? Because there's so much noise going on in social media that you have to at least stand out first, so they can, so you can be remembered, or so they can remember you when they're thinking of their next mortgage person or they have a referral to give. I think that's one thing that people aren't thinking about enough is it's not just the content, it's also what do you want to be known for? So what kind of advice would you give? So like for a loan officer, they just want to get started. Do you think like educational pieces are good if they're going out to consumers and realtors? Like, do you give like advice to loan officers as what kind of content, or do you make that specific on the LO and what's important to them?
No. So I think putting out content in general is a good way to start. But like what you're talking about, Chad, I definitely think it's important to the riches are in the niches. Like, and I mean that. Find out what are you able to connect with people on. And when it comes to putting out content from the mortgage industry, when it's educational, there's only so much of that again your audience wants to hear. They don't want to hear about mortgages every single day because on it, like, yes, a mortgage is honestly, they need it, but they don't want it. Nobody wants a mortgage. Like, fact of the matter, nobody in their right mind wants hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Whether you call your home an asset, like, nobody wants a mortgage. They want what comes with it. They want the home. They want the bigger background or the bigger backyard. They want that. So don't be just educational in the way of mortgage. So here, I'll give a couple of examples. There's a couple of great people in the industry doing this right now, and it can be anything that you're passionate about. So I know people that they do a podcast on cooking. And so they're sharing different recipes and you're like, cooking.
I was just going to bring this up.
Yeah. He does a great job. He shares some of his recipes. And then it goes back to you and I are both really big Gary Vaynerchuk fans. One of my favorite books is Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, if you read that book, you understand this concept. You're constantly throwing these little jabs. And then every once in a while, you throw that right hook where everybody's like, oh, whoa, like, okay, that's right. Chad does mortgages. I knew that. But they were just following Chad because they love the content you're putting out. People think that this content has to be like earth shattering and like absolutely shake you to the core. That's not it. Like, you have to be putting out content that people are just engaged. Like, they're like, oh, that was a great piece of content. Like, I'm going to watch. Like you said, Chad, the world is getting noisier and noisier. Still not too noisy. Like, you still have an opportunity, but people are scrolling through. You have to put out that content that's going to catch their eye and be like, oh yeah, that's right. Or Chad likes to go mountain biking. Hey, I like to go mountain biking. I'm going to watch that video. And then they start following, then they see more and more mountain bike videos. And the next thing you know, you throw that right hook and you're like, hey, by the way, I'm a mortgage professional. If you ever need help or advice on that, I am always here for you. Or throwing in an educational video about something like that. That is absolutely it. So Ryan Eller, if you guys follow Ryan Eller, he's one of my favorite examples in the industry. He's a mountain biker. That's why I use that example. He does it so well. And then he throws in those right hooks. Like, it's just like, holy cow, that worked perfectly.
And you're building community that way too.
Exactly.
There's and even before I started my podcast, I sponsored just to drive your point home. I'm a huge Florida State Seminoles fan. If you can't tell from the Charlie Ward jersey and the other
right in the background, right? Yeah.
But so there was a podcast that I always listened to that was all about Florida State football, and I heard a couple of sponsors, and Louisiana Hot Sauce is a sponsor as an example. But I was like, you know what? Like, I just wanted to contribute back. It's kind of one of those things, right? If you give enough value, then you just want to, you want to take Gary, right? I'm just waiting to buy something that he puts out because you get so much stuff for free and so much value that I want to support them. So about a year and a half ago, I was like, hey, you know what? I want to just reach out to them and see if I can sponsor, their podcast. So, they were like, sure, no problem. Obviously they vetted us. They went online. They wanted to check all of our reviews, and they really did the due diligence, which made me really happy that they did that. They have a lot of listeners on this podcast, and I think we've closed about 22 loans in the past 12 months just off of sponsoring somebody else's podcast because they already had the built-in listeners. But here's the beautiful part. Like, every time the borrowers call, the first 15 minutes of the conversation, what do you think we talk about? Florida State football. That's it. Like literally, by the time we're done talking about football and the Seminoles and how bad we suck or if we're going to be good next year, they're already like, well, can you help me with my mortgage? It's less about rate. It's already like built in. So you can either start the podcast yourself and start talking about cooking or mountain biking, or you could find, hey, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Let me go find these big Star Wars podcasts out there. And that way you're not building the whole community, and you're not building your brand as much, but you could still attach yourself to, hey, Josh is a Star Wars fan. And now all of a sudden we have something in common. Now all of a sudden I like Josh more. And now all of a sudden we're getting mortgages out of it. And it's, you don't have to do all the work of putting all the content together, but just a little side note there, because it's something I did about 18 months ago. It's been working really, really well for us.
That's just it, is you find something that other people connect with. Sports teams are probably one of my favorite. I've seen so many people do this. Is sports teams usually have a group Facebook page. They usually have some type of community that you can be part of. And the last thing you want to do is go in there and be you just join, or you're part of it. Like, look at me, I'm a real estate, I'm a mortgage professional, and like, this is, you should use me. You get in the conversation, and humans, by human nature, we're inquisitive people. If you and I connect on one of the, the Seminoles Facebook pages and like, hey, by the way, Chad, what do you do? Oh yeah, oh, that's right. I saw that other video. I was following you, and you do mortgages. Hey, I'm looking to refinance. That is the way. That's what social media was designed for. That's exactly how it's meant to be used. And again, like I mentioned, if you do it right, you are ahead of 99% of the rest of the world, because especially in our industry, so many people are doing it wrong. It's actually more of a hindrance to them than a benefit.
Right.
So what you're talking about, Chad, is exactly spot on.
So for those people that say, I'm too, I don't have enough time right now to do it, or you can't really get business, from social media. What would you tell those people that say, it's too time consuming, or it's not going to lead to business?
So let's start with it. It's not going to lead to business. I have example after example after example of how it leads to business. How is not, I talked about Quicken, building a personal brand. They're using influencers right now to build their brand. They're using other people's brand to build their brand. If you don't think building a brand is relevant in this time and age, like you're missing the entirety of social media, like the reach. Imagine if you've been in this industry for 25 years and you're asking, and trust me, Chad, I've had people like, I've had CMOs of major mortgage companies reach out to me and say, Josh, do you really think it's a good play, or is it too noisy? I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you a CMO in this industry if you're asking me that question? Like, no offense, but you need to be guys, right now, you have to start building a brand. It absolutely, again, you can't look at it as a short-term investment. This is long-term. Right. Which leads me to that next question that you mentioned, Chad. How much time? Like, oh, I don't have time. Yes, you do. Unless you are literally closing 50 loans a month, even then, you should still make time. Never say that you're too busy, because again, this is a long-term play. But don't start, like I tell people, don't start with 2 hours a day doing social media. That'd be crazy. Start with 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Just add it into your schedule. Go through your schedule and say, hey, where can I add? And maybe, ladies, maybe it's you're off work. Maybe it's after the kids go to bed. You're like, hey, now I'm going to dedicate 15 minutes. I'm going to get on here. I'm going to educate myself and say, okay, I'm going to go watch Chad. I'm going to go watch Josh. I'm going to watch some of these other people in the industry. Oh, that's how they're doing it. Okay, perfect. I can do that as well. Or, hey, here's something I'm passionate about. I'm going to use Facebook. I'm going to use YouTube. And that's just it. Is you have to find your medium. I mentioned that earlier. Find where are you most active? Whatever platform you're most active on, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, use that platform. Maybe it's just a podcast. Maybe you just want to do a podcast and do that. Time, if you tell yourself you don't have enough time, then you are a commodity. You will be replaced, because the best of the best in the industry are seeing this movement. They're seeing this train start to move, and they say, hey, now's the time to jump on. And I'm telling you now, it's not too late. The train is still at the station, but you got to get on now. You got to start feeding that fire, and then you'll be right there with everybody else. And again, Chad, when it comes to time, you have to be consistent. Don't just do this for 2 months and be like, you would not believe how many people message me on Facebook or on LinkedIn and be like, Josh, you know what? I'm giving up, dude. I've tried this for 2 months. I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, what? Like 2 months? Like, I've been working on this for years. Like, are you kidding me? You have to give more time. This is a long-term play. Like you mentioned, this is macro. This is going to take a while, but I promise you, I have never once, in all the time I've been doing this now, if somebody gets in, and whether they just start with once a week, once a day, whatever it is, be consistent with that content. And I promise you'll see that audience grow. You'll start to see deals. And is it going to be in the first month? No. If you get a deal your first month, like, you should be ecstatic. You should be like, oh my gosh. That was pure luck. So,
and I think it's making those daily deposits each and every day. And the other mistake I see people doing too is they're all about posting the content, which is good, right? You got to post your content, you got to build your brand, but also, right, it's the people forget the social aspect of social media. Like, you have to go and engage on their turf, right? So like little things that, and some people don't realize, like on Facebook, as an example, I set up a friends list, and so I'll have all my past customers in a friends list, right? You go in, you friend all of them, you put them in a friends list. And so that way, if I want to be strategic and intentional about spending my time on social media, I'm going to go into that friends list and I'm going to pull up, and it gives me a separate news feed just for those people. So now, I know that Susie just went on a cruise, and I'm commenting on Susie's cruise. And then she's thinking, oh, Chad's following everything that I'm doing, and and then she's remembering, oh, Chad's in mortgages, or Josh is in media. And so it's not just us putting out to them, it's us engaging on their turf. And I think a lot of people aren't taking enough time to engage in what's important to our customers or our referral partners.
2 points of this, Chad. You make an incredible point on this. First one is I was actually on a webinar with some of the LinkedIn, like there's a group that I'm part of that you actually get to learn about LinkedIn algorithms and what just happened. LinkedIn in particular, they're actually starting to follow more and more what Facebook is doing. Facebook is already doing what you're talking about. They look at who you're engaging with. And if you just put out content, your SSI score is actually dropping. Like it, and again, not to get into technical terms, but that basically, if you just post content and don't go engage with anybody, your content will actually be seen by less people. Like you have to be willing to go out and engage and become, not just go through and like, heart. You actually have to go through and comment.
Yeah, and the liking and the commenting is like, that's like the bottom of the barrel nowadays. It's like you gotta truly at least leave a freaking emoji,
Yes, exactly. You have to put something in there that is not just like a good job. Like you have to actually engage with it. Now, to the second part of this, you mentioned your client list, which is brilliant. You should absolutely, anytime you close a loan, the first thing you should be doing is adding that person on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever platform and make sure they add you back. Yep. I'm going to give you this tip, and I talked about this in a podcast last week, is there are so many people in our industry following other influencers, and I'm going to get flack for this. I know this other episode hasn't come out, but I guarantee when these couple episodes go out, people are going to give me crap for this, but I mean this, is one of the things that I see is people who are loan officers, mortgage professionals, they're following every other person in the mortgage profession. That is hurting you, because you're seeing their content all the time. I say pick a few. Like you mentioned, there's some people who are doing a really, really good job. Find a few people, and maybe I'm not your cup of tea. There are people who I've been told, like, Josh, you got to settle down, dude. You talk way too fast. You wear a hat all the time. Like, hey, I don't like you. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you like Chad's style or his podcast and his show better, pick a couple of people, 5 max. Maybe like if you go above and beyond, go to 10. Those people, follow those people, but don't go outside of that. The thing that I see people doing is when they first get on social media, when they're really starting to ramp up, get started, like we've been talking about, is they'll go follow 100 or 200, which, I mean, it's hard to find unless you actually dig into content like I do. It's hard to find 200 people who are really doing a good job on social media, but they go start adding all these originators all across the entire industry. And then they're like, well, this is too noisy. Yeah, it's too noisy because you went and sought those people out. And now you're just seeing it in your feed all the time. Follow a few people in the industry. That's all you need. Like truly, you get some ideas from them. I talk about it all the time. Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon is one of my favorite books. Watch the content that they're doing. Don't plagiarize people's content. Go look at other people's content. Say, that's a great idea. Hey, Chad just put this out. That's awesome. I'm going to put my own spin on it, and I'm going to go talk about it myself. That's it. But your client list that you just mentioned, Chad, if nothing else today, go through your client list, your CRM. What if you have an Excel spreadsheet CRM? You should use social media as a big CRM, a CRM that you're able to stay in front of people in a very, very raw, genuine, authentic way. That's how you should use it. Make sure you add them, Chad. That was brilliant, man. I love that comment.
Because it'll give you an opportunity if you pay attention. Social media will give you those opportunities for you to be able to go out and I read the book, the book, The One Thing, and it talks a lot about, look, we used to call them one thing gifts. So if you notice that, you have a borrower whose son is homesick from school and they're posting, Jimmy, little Johnny's homesick today. Like imagine if you, because we've done this before, so I'm going to keep throwing a random example, but you send a little care package to the house, a get well soon little package with a teddy bear in it for the son. Could you imagine like what that would do as far as mind share with that past customer? Like who else is going to send, like you're their freaking loan officer and now you just send a care package to their house. So if you follow social media, people will give you every clue that you need in order to how to stand out in a crowd and go just a little above and beyond. If they're sick, if they're taking a trip, like send them a little handwritten or a little book on Frommer's Guide to whatever city they're going to or whatever. Like it'll give you every opportunity for you to stand out in a crowd and not just be like everybody else, but you have to listen and pay attention to what they're doing and not just be the talker on social media, but also, listen and pay attention to what they're doing.
So Chad, what you just said, that's exactly how I got started in social media. I was adding my clients and I would see them do something and I would actually send them a message on Messenger. I would do a quick video because on Messenger, that was back when it was clunky and didn't work very well. But Messenger allows you to do a 20-second video. You could send him a quick message like, hey, Chad, I saw your little son's not feeling well. So sorry to hear that. Like, just hope he's doing well. If there's anything I can do for you and the family, let me know. Like, and that's it. Like, if you just do that, your idea, sending them a little care package, you're like, oh my gosh, little Johnny's sick. Like, you send him something, get on Amazon and do something under $15, send him something that is going to stand out. Like, oh my gosh, like Chad saw my post, like, and he went above, not only did he like and comment, but he sent me something from that. Here's the thing is CRM sometimes I think are a cop out. Like I mentioned, use social media as a CRM. And if your clients are on there, they should be on your regular rotation to make sure you're looking at them. Because again, even if they're posting content, you're not going to see it all the time. So I was actually I had a list of all my clients on social media. I would look them up. Like everybody says, hey, call your clients or text your clients. I was looking them up on social media. I was trying to do at least once a week, if not every couple of weeks, every single client. And I said, oh my gosh, I didn't see that post. I would like it. I would comment on it. If it was something that really stood out, I would even share it for them. You want to talk about really getting a referral partner and catching their attention? Share one of their posts. And like you share a real estate agent's post, oh man, they're like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That was all like, and that goes above and beyond. It's stuff like that people are like, oh, I never even thought of that. Like simple stuff like that.
It's the little things. So I like to keep these shows, short enough to where it's like drive time. Josh, I'm going to put your information in the show notes, but for those listening, they want to reach out to you. They want to, follow you on social media, get in touch with you. Where can they find you?
Absolutely.
Other than everywhere on social media.
Yeah. So you can find me on all the different channels, Josh Pitts Live on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, or you can just go Shred Media on all the different channels. You will find us. And anything that we can do to continue to help you grow your brand, use social media, we're here for you. And Chad, again, I cannot thank you again, man, for this opportunity to come on your show. We went a little bit long. I apologize, but so much information.
I could do this for hours, man. It's something we're both passionate about. And so I appreciate for you helping everybody in the industry, giving all the advice that you're giving, for free out there. I really commend you for it, and I appreciate you coming on today and joining us, and hopefully everybody else got a lot out of today's show. And Josh, again, I'll post all your stuff below. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hope you guys all have a fantastic day. Have a great day. Bye-bye.